Westworld Season 3, Episode 3 is called The Absence of Field. This refers to a poem by Mark Strand about a person who exists in the absence of something else. Because in this episode, the real Charlotte Hale is dead, but a host Charlotte pretends to be her. She exists in Charlotte's absence. She fills in the gap that Charlotte left behind. The episode starts with a flashback to the real human Charlotte during the Westworld massacre, shortly before we see her in Season 2. Charlotte is terrified, she thinks she's going to die, so she records a message for her son Nathan. Later, in Season 2, Dolores killed Charlotte, and impersonated her in a Charlotte body. Then Dolores left Westworld in the Charlotte body, and brought with her 5 host brains, or pearls. Out in the real world, Dolores recreated Bernard from her memories, and she created this new Charlotte host. This scene actually happens before the rest of Season 3, because Dolores has Bernard's pearl. This is before she lets Bernard loose and he becomes a fugitive. It's interesting that Bernard's pearl is coloured red. Previously, all 5 of Dolores' pearls looked black. Maybe the colour changed when Dolores recreated Bernard. His personality does now seem to include aspects of the human Arnold. When the human James Delos and Ford were made into hosts, they also had red pearls, so the red might indicate Bernard's human side. Dolores talks with this new host Charlotte, who acts like a newborn child. She's confused at first, but then she remembers who she is. So, who is she? Presumably, Charlotte has one of these 5 brains in her head, someone who Dolores took from Westworld into the real world. Dolores says she trusts this person, and they know each other. They embrace, like how Dolores and Teddy once embraced. Teddy always was Dolores' closest ally, so maybe Dolores put his mind into this Charlotte body. Last season, Dolores did say that Teddy is one last soul to carry to the new world. But Dolores uploaded Teddy to the Sublime, the digital paradise for hosts. She left him behind, and it was a big emotional moment showing the cost of Dolores' choices. It seemed like an end to Teddy's story. So will they really bring him back? There are other possibilities. The way Charlotte acts with a gentle innocence is similar to how Clementine used to act. Clementine was lobotomized and then turned into a mindless deathbot, so she probably can't be this new Charlotte. But Clementine might be a useful weapon still, so maybe Clem is one of Dolores' other pearls. Maybe new Charlotte is Peter Abernathy, Dolores' host father. His brain got all scrambled because it held the encryption key to the Forge, Westworld's data on human minds. Serac wants that key, so maybe Peter's brain will be important again this season. But Dolores had an emotional farewell with her father before ripping his brain out. It felt like an ending, and he was such a minor character anyway, so he probably isn't Charlotte. Angela worked with Dolores in Season 2, but Angela blew herself up in the cradle, specifically to destroy all the host backups, so she probably won't come back. It could be Hector or Armistice, they are useful fighters, but Dolores doesn't really know them. She's never spoken to Hector or Armistice, so they can't be this new Charlotte who Dolores knows and trusts. Maybe Hector and Armistice could be one of these other pearls. So, of these 5 pearls, we know that one is Bernard, another could be Hector or Armistice or Peter or Clementine. The one inside Charlotte might be Teddy, but there could be a different twist. Dolores and new Charlotte are surrounded by imagery of mirrors and reflection. In their hotel room, there's this statue of 2 identical figures reflected symmetrically, and this symmetrical artwork. There's also a mirror and these shadows. There's copies and reflections everywhere. Maybe new Charlotte is a copy of Dolores, and that's why Dolores trusts her and knows her. She is her. Dolores says, "No one knows you like I do. No one knows me like you." That line itself is like a mirror image. New Charlotte says, "Why can't I be myself like you?" Which could mean that Charlotte's real self is Dolores. Dolores' goal is the birth of a new host species, to grow like these cells in the opening theme. Maybe, as a host, she won't reproduce sexually, but by self-replication, by copying herself. Maybe all these pearls that she took from Westworld are blank, and she's just copying herself onto them. Like the Smiths in The Matrix, Dolores could fill the world with herself. But new Charlotte is not identical to Dolores. She's a younger, more vulnerable version. She's more like a daughter than a copy, and Dolores cares for her like a mother. Their embrace is like Maeve with her daughter. Motherhood is a big theme this episode, with Charlotte and Nathan, Caleb and his mother, and all of these relationships are difficult. Because kids aren't just copies of their parents, they have their own influences and conflicts that make them grow into something new. So there are a million possibilities, but it seems pretty likely that new Charlotte is a copy of Dolores. But thematically, their relationship explores motherhood and growth and change, because that's how life survives, by never staying the same. Dolores gets new Charlotte to impersonate the old human Charlotte, because old Charlotte worked at Delos, the company that owns the Westworld parks, and Dolores wants Delos to keep making hosts. Maybe she just needs the pearls to copy herself onto. Charlotte gets a giant robot. The Delos website calls this the Mech, and it's apparently a cutting-edge dystopian riot control machine. Apparently, Delos made 300 of them, and Charlotte says she's sure she can find some use for them. So no doubt she'll send these things on a rampage for the robot revolution. Charlotte learns that she's lost control of the Delos company, because a heap of stock was bought by companies controlled by Serac. A Delos woman called Irene says that Serac is like a black hole, because he's invisible. There's no information about him anywhere. But like a black hole, you can detect him by his influence. Serac is the wealthiest man in the world, but all his wealth is hidden. So he can only be detected in the world's missing money, in the economic negative space, like that poem again, The Absence of Field. Irene says that Delos once sold Serac a copy of data from the Forge, all the human minds recorded in the Westworld Park, and that's why Serac bought out Delos. He wants more of that data, which makes sense because Serac runs Rehoboam, which uses surveillance data to predict and control people. New Charlotte goes to the home of the old human Charlotte. She intrudes into the life of the dead person she's impersonating, and she finds old Charlotte's ex, called Jake, who startles Charlotte so much that she immediately starts fucking him out of pure confusion. Jake calls Charlotte Charlie, and Charlie happens to be the name of Arnold's dead son. There was a crazy theory years ago that Charlie is somehow a younger Charlotte, so this line might be the showrunner's way of teasing the audience over this theory. Jonathan Nolan says they love to fuck with Reddit. We meet old Charlotte's son, Nathan, which forces us to see old Charlotte differently. In past seasons, she was always a ruthless corporate head kicker, with zero regard for human or host life, so it wasn't terribly sad when Dolores killed her. But now that we see that poor Nathan has lost his mother, we're forced to see some tragedy in old Charlotte's death. Also, these arrow shapes look a lot like these shapes on Rehoboam in the intro, which is curious. New Charlotte mentions that elephants are now extinct. The only elephants left are these host elephants in the Raj. It's like how humans might go extinct and be replaced by hosts, just like human Charlotte was replaced by host Charlotte. We learned that old Charlotte was a pretty shitty mom to Nathan. Nathan says that Charlotte doesn't love him. So new Charlotte does her best to be a mother to this human child, just like Dolores tries to be a mother to new Charlotte. Once again, the most real and sincere relationships in this series are not with the humans, they're with the hosts. At Delos, Charlotte learns that someone at Westworld stole some host brains, including Maeve's. We saw last episode that Maeve's brain was taken, apparently so that Serac could put Maeve in this simulation, along with a bunch of other brains. So there's a mole at Westworld, someone who's working for Serac and stealing host brains. We later learn that old human Charlotte was working for Serac, but she's not the only mole, because old Charlotte was probably dead before Maeve's brain was stolen, and Serac says that he has other people under his control, so it sounds like there's another mole at Westworld who stole Maeve's brain. There aren't many options on who this could be, because the only surviving humans who we know at Westworld are Felix, Sylvester, David Benioff, and D.B. Weiss, so unless one of them works for Serac, the mole must be a new character, or maybe some even more ridiculous twist. New Charlotte starts cutting herself. She's freaking out, feeling like the old human Charlotte is inside her, trying to cut her way out. New Charlotte might have some forged data on old Charlotte, like a copy of old Charlotte inside her so that she knows how to act like her. But behaving and thinking like someone is pretty close to being that person. The whole idea of hosts in this story is that machines pretending to be people become those people. Like, Maeve didn't really have a daughter, she's a robot, but she played the role of a mother, and that made that identity true. So now this new Charlotte, playing the role of old Charlotte, is becoming like old Charlotte. She's playing her role a little too well. The cutting is interesting because when the human James Delos was made into a host, he also cut himself. The idea is that copied human minds struggle to survive in host bodies. Also, these cuts are shaped a bit like these circular images from Rehoboam, which is curious. Charlotte comes to Dolores for support, and all the dialogue and imagery fits well with the idea of new Charlotte being a copy of Dolores. Dolores says that to take back control of Delos, she'll need to visit an old friend. Dolores has called William an old friend before, and William is super rich and has lots of Delos stock, so maybe Dolores and Charlotte will get William's help to take back Delos from Serac. Last season, there was that flash forward to a far future host version of William in a loop, but in the present timeline, we last saw William alive in Westworld. New Charlotte sees the recording of old human Charlotte. It's a heartfelt message to her son Nathan. Akecheta once said that you live as long as the last person who remembers you. Old Charlotte is remembered, so in some sense she lives on in New Charlotte. New Charlotte is moved by this message. It seems to inspire her to be a mother to Nathan. She finds Nathan with a creepy child predator, so Charlotte murders him on the spot. Then Charlotte takes the man's dog and gives it to Nathan. A dog is not as cool as an elephant, but it's a pretty good start. Charlotte makes a real connection with Nathan, and she achieves it through murder, because this is a fierce kind of motherhood. She says that this murder helps her to remember who she is, a predator. So, is she referring to her identity as Dolores, or her identity as old Charlotte, or both? Maybe she's finding a new identity from a combination of influences, because that's how people grow, right? New Charlotte started out like a child, vulnerable and innocent. Then she went through a teenage stage, rebelling against her mother, Dolores. Now she moves towards adulthood, with new confidence and certainty in her identity. New Charlotte tells Nathan, "You are my sunshine," because she learned from old Charlotte's message that she used to sing that song to Nathan. And this unlocks a mystery, because throughout the episode, Charlotte gets these weird voice messages that play buzzing noises. She uses the "You Are My Sunshine" melody as a password to unlock her mysterious contact, Serac. Because the mole in Delos feeding data to Serac was old human Charlotte. This connects way back to seasons 1 and 2, when Charlotte tried to send data out of the park. Turns out she was doing that for Serac because he wants Westworld's data. Serac needs the encryption key to unlock Westworld's data, and he says that the key is in Dolores' head, though last we saw the key was in Peter Abernathy's head. It's interesting that Serac appears here as a hologram. He's a phantom menace like Palpatine. The only other time we see him is in this weird garden with Maeve, which for all we know could have been another simulation. Maybe the real Serac is dead, and what we see is a digital manifestation of the computer Rehoboam. It's like how Ford died, then lived on inside his creation in Season 2. Dolores says that Rehoboam's data forms a digital mirror world. Maybe that world is where Serac exists. So, Charlotte is in a crazy situation. She's totally new to this world, and yet she's got to pretend to be Serac's mole, and pretend to be loyal to Delos, and pretend to be a mother to Nathan, and pretend to be a human while starting a robot revolution with Dolores, all at the same time. Dolores expects her to be obedient to her, but maybe Charlotte will choose her own path. Maybe she'll help Serac, or embrace her identity as Nathan's mother. Charlotte may have started as a copy of Dolores or someone, but kids aren't just DNA. They grow and change depending on experiences and environment. In Season 1, Stubbs said that children all rebel eventually. Meanwhile, Caleb helps Dolores after she was shot in Episode 1. Dolores is a stranger to Caleb, but he's determined to save her. We know that in the past, Caleb's friend Francis bled out in his arms. Caleb couldn't save his friend, so maybe he wants to redeem and make peace with his past by saving Dolores. He gets her to an ambulance, and the medical computer finds that Dolores' blood and hormones are weird because she's a robot. And since the computer gets confused, the medics do nothing, which shows how over-reliant this society is on technology. Caleb steps in and does the obvious thing, treating the wound. He must have medical training from the army. And instead of relying on a machine to tell him what to do, Caleb thinks for himself. The ambulance is pulled over by police, but Caleb sees on Rico, the crime app, that these cops have been bought. They're criminals who'll hurt Dolores. Maybe they're sent by Serac. Though it does seem like a pretty bad design flaw that the app warns its own victims. So Caleb stands against the cops and defiantly faces a gun pointed at him, just as he did in episode 1. Shit gets real and Dolores kills the cops. She's hurt from her wounds, but as a robot, she's still strong enough to drag corpses around with one hand while wearing heels, and Caleb is suitably impressed. Dolores steals a cop car, unlocking it by facial recognition, and Dolores thanks Caleb for helping her, telling him that he's a good man. Last season, Dolores brutalized humans, saying that they're evil and have no free will. But now she acknowledges that Caleb made a choice to help her. Dolores realizes that not all humans are bad, and they don't all deserve to be wiped out. After the shooting, Caleb is a wanted man, so he tells his mum that he'll be away for a while. His mum doesn't recognize him, and says she wants her son back. This might just be because of her mental health and cognitive issues, or it could maybe mean that Caleb secretly died in the army and was replaced with a robot. He does make a weird comment that he's a dead man. Or it might just mean that Caleb has been changed by his traumatic experiences and is no longer the boy his mother knew. Or maybe it's all of the above, because this is Westworld after all. Caleb is captured by people from Rico. They want information on Dolores. Maybe they're working for Serac. So they torture Caleb using the digital drug device everyone has. Apparently it's called a drip, and since Caleb was in the military, his is extra powerful. The Rico guys use it to pump up Caleb's heart rate, risking heart attack. So in this dystopian future, technology can control people just like the hosts are controlled. This is just like when Bernard was digitally tortured last season. Caleb heroically refuses to hand over Dolores. Not that he could hand her over, because he knows next to nothing about her. For the third time in 3 episodes, he's defiant when a gun is pointed at him. Showrunner Lisa Joy says that Caleb doesn't value his own life very much. He has suicidal impulses. So he's not just being brave here, he's being self-destructive. Caleb has flashbacks of his past, and this shot looks like Caleb and Francis in weird masks. You can tell it's them because Caleb's wearing the same outfit as in this shot. The eye design on the mask is interesting. Rehoboam is a sort of all-seeing eye. Maybe Caleb and Francis weren't just soldiers, but were activists or terrorists fighting against Incite and Rehoboam. We have seen protests against Incite in trailers. Caleb's robot friend comes to help Caleb. Maybe he is programmed to save people when they're in danger. But the criminals push poor innocent George to his death. F's in the chat. But then another robot friend comes to save Caleb. Dolores. Dolores found out that Caleb was in danger from Martin, or rather from the host that Dolores replaced Martin with in episode 1. We don't know whose mind is inside this host. It could be someone like Hector or Armistice, or maybe it's another copy of Dolores. Martin found out that Caleb was in danger from surveillance footage. It's weird that Martin can so easily spy on Caleb, and yet Serac, who runs the whole system, is apparently unable to find Dolores or even to notice that Charlotte has been replaced by a robot. Maybe Serac actually does know all this stuff and is manipulating everyone. There's been a lot of talk this season about data technology controlling people, but so far it's been abstract and vague. So Dolores explains specifically how the Incite Corporation affects people like Caleb. She shows a transcript of a conversation Caleb had when he was a kid, when his mother left him at a diner and she was institutionalized. It was a terrible, traumatic, private memory, so it enrages Caleb to see it laid out in a corporation's surveillance database. At the diner, Kid Caleb puked milkshake on himself, and this shot looks just like William's memory of his wife's suicide. This is a cornerstone memory, a moment that defines Caleb's life. And so along with data on calls, jobs, purchases, relationships, and everything else, Incite can exploit this information to control Caleb. Dolores takes Caleb to a pier and says that Incite's data predicts that in 10 years or so, Caleb will kill himself, that his mental health, military history, and every other moment leads here to his death. That prediction is why Caleb didn't get that job before, because companies use Incite's data to make hiring decisions and they don't want to hire someone who'll just die. These kinds of algorithms are already used to hire people in the real world, and have been criticized for bias. Caleb's profile says, marriage not recommended, children not approved, restrict social interaction. So it looks like companies and platforms have manipulated Caleb to hold him back because of the data they have on him. This takes away Caleb's free will, because he might not have killed himself, but because this prediction prevents him from progressing, he's more likely to do it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like in Season 2, when James Delos predicts that his son Logan will relapse into drugs. Because of James's prediction, and his lack of faith in his son, Logan does relapse and ends up dead. Data doesn't just describe the present, it shapes the future, and takes away human choice. So Dolores gives Caleb a choice. He can run away to a new life, or he can join her revolution against the system. She wants to unplug Rehoboam and Incite and show the world for what it really is. Caleb chooses to join her, because she's the first real thing to happen to him in a while. The irony being that Dolores is a host, which Caleb doesn't seem to have figured out yet. How will he react when he learns that Dolores is a robot? Season 3 is a grand conflict between freedom and control, and humanity's liberator is a machine. Serac says that he wants to save the world by using data to control humanity, but he comes up against individuals like Dolores who he can't predict. These same ideas are explored in Isaac Asimov's Foundation, a classic sci-fi series which was at one time developed for TV by Westworld showrunner Jonathan Nolan. Asimov also wrote hundreds of short stories, including the collection I, Robot. Asimov was a huge influence, not only on Westworld, but on how we all think about robots. He invented the word robotics. If you've never read Asimov, maybe start with The Last Question, which he said is his favorite of his stories. You can get any of these audiobooks for free right now by signing up for a trial with Audible. Members get an audiobook each month, and if you cancel, you keep the audiobooks. You can listen while you social distance and stay at home. Sign up at audible.com/ASX. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. We're holding live streams right after each episode of Season 3 at about 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time Sundays. Patreon supporters can watch live streams after their broadcast. Thanks to patrons Haley, Paddy Delamore, Richard Holgerson, Greg Naus, Vikas Bardwaj, The Idiot Geek, and VFUWO1JB9D. Cheers.